Let's look at 3 examples of using the distributive property. And the distributive property is what I think of as sharing in math. In this expression, let me read to you out loud. Let me use words to show you how you would say this. You would say this: 4 times the quantity 3x minus 1. When you hear me say the quantity, you should immediately think parentheses. When I say the quantity, what comes after that phrase is going to be what's inside the parentheses. So again, the way I would say this out loud is 4 times the quantity, parentheses, 3x subtract 1. Okay, so I'm taking 4 times that entire quantity, and math is great because in math we share. And so I am going to use the distributive property to distribute this 4. It's being multiplied times this entire piece, but I can simplify this by taking 4 and multiplying times each piece inside. So I can rewrite this as 4 times 3x. The subtract is going to still stay the same there. And then 4 times 1. Notice the sign right here is still the sign that's in between them. Now I can do some simplification. 4 times 3x is 12x. Subtract 4 times 1 is 4. Now, are those like terms? Can they be combined? No, they cannot. That is my final answer, 12x subtract 4. Okay, let's take a look at this next problem. Negative 2 times the quantity 4 subtract 6x. So I can take this negative 2 and I can multiply it times each individual piece. So I can take negative 2 times 4. And you know what? When I'm doing my own math with the distributive property, I really do draw all those arrows. And then I take negative 2 times 6x. Now, don't forget, what sign goes right here in between them? It's going to be this sign. That sign's not going to change. So there's a subtract there. Okay, there's a lot of negative signs going on in here. It's okay, we'll simplify them. Negative 2 times 4 is negative 8. Subtract, we're going to keep that there for a moment. Negative 2 times 6x is a negative 12x. Now, subtracting a negative 12x is the same as adding a 12x. So I simplified that subtract negative into an add right there. Can I combine those two? No, I cannot. They are not like terms. Now let me do a little side note here. It is okay to multiply things that aren't like terms. Those aren't like terms, but I can multiply them and get 6x. However, I can't add things, add and subtract, unless they're like terms. So multiplying and dividing is totally fine, but you can't add or subtract unless they're like terms. Okay, let's do this third example. Negative quantity 2k minus 10. Okay, what is out here in front of this quantity? Say there's a negative sign, but there's something else there too, whether we wrote it or there or not. There actually is an implied negative 1. That's what it means when there's a negative out in front of there. And I think it looks a lot better when you put the negative 1 there instead of just the negative. You'll see this a lot though in math, but it makes a lot more sense when you put the negative 1, when you put the 1 there with the negative sign. Now I'm going to distribute this negative 1 to each piece. So I'll get negative 1 times 2k. This sign still stays the same. And I'll get negative 1 times 10. Now I'll do some simplification. Negative 1 times 2k is negative 2k. Subtract. The sign stays the same. Negative 1 times 10 is a negative 10. This subtracting a negative can be simplified. We can change that to be a negative 2k add 10. Those are not like terms. I can go no farther on that. Let me do one more problem here. Let me do a negative, let's put a variable on the outside. Okay, this is a little bit of a hokey problem because most likely you would actually add the 5 and the 3 together first. But let's pretend you don't. You can still use the distributive property on here. Totally legal. So I have this negative 10K on the outside. I can distribute it to each piece in here. I can take it to a negative 10K times 5, and the addition stays the same. And then I can multiply it times this piece right here, negative 10K times 3. Then we can simplify it. A negative 10K times 5, we're actually going to multiply those coefficients and get negative 50K. And then we're adding a negative 10 times 3, negative 10K times 3, and we get a negative 30K. And then these are like terms. Negative 50K, negative 30K, like terms. We can combine them together to get a negative 80K for our final answer. So have fun with the distributive property. Remember, what we're doing is this was 4 times this quantity. So we're distributing this 4 through multiplication to each piece.